in case you guys don't know, my girlfriend is a elementary music teacher. And if you're an elementary teacher out there, how many times have you heard this where a little kid comes up to you and says, "Wait a minute, you don't live at the school?" Now, that could be a shocking thing. And what we're going to do is talk today about how being a teacher does not define who you are. And you actually don't live at the school, contrary to what your students and what even you may think.
Welcome to the Teach Bigger podcast. I'm Chris Pratt.
I'm Chris Mosley.
And I'm Tyler Lamont. Being a teacher is a calling. It's definitely a inner desire to want to help others, to be a part of a bigger goal. That's why we all do it, right? Being a teacher is not a bad thing. That's not what we're talking about. But we are talking about how it's important to have balance in your life. It's important to know who you are and that you are not defined by your job. That taking home your work, although can be a beneficial thing and you might feel good about it, but taking home your work every single day, or taking home that thought of where that kid yelled at you or whatever and bringing that home and sitting at the dinner table and letting that ring in your mind over and over again, that's not a good thing. And you have to remember, and some things that I have to do constantly is remind myself that I'm a person. I'm not a teacher. Being a teacher is just one of the many things that I do. It's one of the many hats that I wear. Like, for example, this past weekend, I did an escape room. And it was my friend's birthday party, and I planned this huge, big thing. I kind of think I was able to plan it because I am a teacher, but I planned out this really extravagant birthday party for him. And we did an escape room, and it was probably the most fun I've ever had ever. And then I built and finished building my computer and downloaded a whole bunch of video games that I only play for 30 minutes a night because, of other duties that I have to do. But the point is that I find things that I want to do, things that resonate with me, things that interest me, and it helps me stay balanced. And these things that are balancing me also help me in the classroom as well. So because it's my personality that's coming out.
Yeah. As educators, we're hard workers because we want to get things right. We get up early, we stay late, we have tutorials, we end up having weekend things. I know, like last year, there were so many weeks where I worked like 80 hours. And so, like, even on the weekends, I didn't have time. And so, like, in this episode, we're talking about just how to maintain a sense of sanity while teaching at the very best. Because since we're givers, like, sometimes we give and give and give, and we forget to take care of ourselves, which then can cause us to burn out. So what we're trying to do is examine, like, put focus on the person, which, yes, you're an educator, but you have to make sure to take time that you know that you're not just an educator, so you can, teach bigger.
Yeah, and think of it this way, like, you don't define your students based on the skills in your one content area, right? What's that saying that's something about a fish is if you judge a fish based on how well it can climb a tree, you'll think it's dumb its whole life. I kind of butchered that, but it's something along those lines. So you can't base your own success as a person solely on your students, because there are other things that you do that you should be proud of, and other things that you do where you should gain joy out of them. Whether that mean that you're a mother, a father, an uncle, an aunt, a sister, a brother, whatever it may be, these things are what make you a person, and they make you worthwhile as well. Because I know that it's very easy to get burned out.
So I know myself. I love being around the students, but I also love going home. And I think that helps me stay sane, So like the weekends, I'm always looking forward to doing something not teachery on the weekends, and I don't take work home. Like when I'm done, and I leave. And when I used to work with Pratt, we always say, "Well, it'll be here tomorrow," and it will.
Yes, I say.
Yeah, he will always say that it will be here tomorrow. So we just like stop and then come back. Because if you could say that 24 hours just keep going and going and going because it's a never ending list. So like, I don't know, like you said, what you did on the weekend, Tyler. I know
Yeah.
that like this weekend, I like went for a bike ride. I just watched movies. I try not to have interactions with a lot of people because during the week I have so much interaction and we have to be on, because I'm an extrovert. I'm an entertainer. Like when I'm around people, and my one of my assistant directors, he said whenever you're around people, like it doesn't matter if you're tired. Whenever I see people come around, like you just cut on, and like you get to this other level, and that makes you tired, And
Yeah.
that is the same thing with kids. Like we give the kids what they need. If we're tired, it doesn't matter how we feel. We give them the energy, entertainment, the information, or whatever they need so they can learn. And that does weigh on you. But so like things on the weekend, think about what you do on the weekend. Is it grading papers? Because if you're grading papers, you're still working,
Yeah.
Or you lesson planning. Yes, I know sometimes you have to lesson plan for like Monday, but when can you do that where you don't have to do it on the weekend? I know that helps me like separate the two a lot. So, and I've been doing it for a long time, and there was times where I did some things at home. It's like a must type of thing, but for the most part, on the weekends, I try not to do anything, regarding school.
Yeah, and I know that's where it can get really hard, especially when you have deadlines, things
Yeah.
that are pressing. Like what maybe it was a really hard week. To me, personally, I feel like when you have short weeks, those are the hardest ones. This past week, we only went to school for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We had Monday, Tuesday was a holiday, and these past 3 days have been like pretty like just rough. And it's not that the kids were bad or anything like that, and like I have a mountain like as tall as me on my desk that just needs to get handled, and it's because I didn't have Monday and Tuesday to do it and all these things. And I think back to like last year when I was like doing all the band stuff and all the percussion stuff and like doing all of these things and constantly feeling like I didn't have time to do stuff. And I know you can sit there and think, well, Tyler, I don't have time to do things. I have to do this, and then like I have 4 kids, and then I have a flat tire, and then the garage is messy, and then the dog and the cat, and then someone's doing this and that, and then my mom calls, and I totally understand that. That's why those few minutes that you get to yourself are so imperative that you do something that makes you happy and that makes you just enjoy life. Like I said, like I have a whole bunch of games I have like a whole terabyte of games on my computer that I just built. I only get maybe an hour to 30 minutes to play. An hour is like if I'm really, really lucky. It's usually just kind of like 30 minutes. And I cherish that time. Is that a lot of time? No, not really. I mean, but for that one speck of time, I have a moment to do something that kind of recharges me and allows me to do something and express myself in a way that makes me feel like Tyler again.
Yeah.
And go for it.
Yeah, no, you're right. So you're so right. Now, my question is for Pratt, because I've worked with you a long time, and it kind of seems like you don't ever stop.
No,
Like
he doesn't. He doesn't have an off switch.
like you ever stop. So my question to you is because there's probably people like that too, because I know even when I was tired, like you would still keep going, and I'm like, I'm shutting down mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and you're like ready to write another song, So I mean, what is it that you do like to detach and refill your cup, if you will?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I already know the answer to this.
Do you refill your cup, or are you just always burnt out?
My cup's been empty for 20 years.
I knew he was gonna say that. I told you that when I was in my student
No
teaching.
wonder you look so stressed. You always look stressed in your face. You just look,
Right.
have a stressed face.
That's what happened to his hair.
Exactly. You know,
I think we want to know. We need to know, what is it that you do, because you have a family, you know, and you're a busy man. So first the question is, you can maybe connect with some of our, you know, teachers who also have families and who are also busy, and who are very motivated like yourself. What is it that you do? Do you have time, or do you just constantly just go in a circle and just let the Lord do his work?
yes. Well, let me preface it by saying this. I can't think of the last time that I wasn't tired. Now, I don't know if that's good or bad, but every day
It's not good.
I have this sad feeling inside that I don't think I'm supposed to be this tired. And I don't even eat bad. So just imagine if I ate, you know, fast food all the time, I'd probably be dead.
You used to.
I did, and I felt horrible.
Oh, let me tell you something. Let me interject. This is a great story since we were talking about you. Y'all listening? Listen. So,
I've listened.
so you know, Pratt, he was on a contract, a 12-month contract, so he's worked all year round. And then so he decides he took a vacation, like he hadn't taken a vacation in a long time. And he took his vacation around like November. So like he took off, and let me tell you what, crew. Whenever Mr. Pratt stepped back, he was a different man. Listen, he was ready to go early. He was just done. He was done until Christmas. He was not the same person. I think because he had a chance to slow down. Like, he went on a cruise, so his phone went off. He was able to just relax and like enjoy his family. And whenever he came back, you know, he was not a nice person to me. He would yell at me and say all these things. Whenever he came back, he still did that. But he was ready to, like, you know, he wasn't just about work. Like, we talked about a whole bunch of other things. And then I think this is kind of where this started to happen. Like, we talked about other opportunities and, you know, ways to expand beyond just our normal teaching day. So that is something, when he stopped and had a chance to, like, you know, disconnect. Because you disconnect when you're on a cruise.
That's true.
When you came back, it totally, you know, changes your point of view. So that's my little story. But go ahead, Mr. Pratt.
You know, all my avid cruisers like myself right now, we're all shedding a little tear because, you know, you really can't go on a cruise right now. So I mean, I guess you could, but yeah.
I still want to go on one right now.
Look,
oh my gosh.
Here's the thing. If you have been on a cruise since the pandemic, please email us at info@teachbigger.com. And like, we want to know your story. Yeah. So like, for sure. But yeah, so, you know, I am not one to take a lot of breaks. And it is definitely something that I've had to learn to do. And having a family has probably been the single changing factor for me, because, you know, I had once I got married, and then we had our first child, and then we had our second child, and now we have our third. And so I really, just over the course of really only those short 6 years, it's really been amazing, because I've realized that I'm more than a teacher, because for a long time, that's really all I was. And, you know, maybe some of our listeners who like you guys who are single, maybe that does, because I know when I was single, that's the way I thought. Like, I didn't have anything else except my career, you know? And then you have like these life-changing things. And I would venture to say that most teachers that are listening to this probably have families, you know, because most people are married. And, you know, and there's just a time and a season for that in most people's lives. I didn't get married until way later in life. I was in my 30s when I got married. So, I mean, I had a lot of time in career world. And so that being said, now that I have a family, it has definitely made me realize how much I focused on my career and myself. And, you know, I think that there's nothing wrong with that, because, you know, our careers are important, and that is the place where, you know, we create and we output and we give back to society, you know. And as a teacher, you know, like Tyler had said, like, we are in it because we want to make a difference and we want to make a change. And that is no small task. Like, it is not easy to make a change, to make a ripple in education, because education, that engine's been running for a long time, and it is hard to have true impact in this because there's so many people involved. It is a big ship, you know. But I was thinking about while you guys were talking, and it kind of got me thinking, like, American society, and we have some listeners that aren't in America, and I would really love to get your feedback on this. And if you want to email us and let us know, like info@teachbigger.com, I want to know how does your society view teachers and careers in education? Because in America, you're sort of, not that you're taught this, but it's just kind of ingrained in our culture that when someone asks, like, hey, what do? You automatically respond with the title of your career. I'm a doctor. Mm-hmm. Hey, what do you do?
That's
I'm a
true.
teacher. What do you do? I'm a construction worker. Like, you don't think, what do you do? I'm a dad. That's my first and foremost job. Even though in your mind and in your heart, you may put that first, and hopefully you do. Like, if you are a parent, that is your number one responsibility. So, but you don't think to introduce yourself that way. And I think it's because of our society runs economically, right? And so I am able to demonstrate my power in a way in society based on my title.
It's a status thing.
It's a status thing.
Now, is it a status thing or is it a passion thing? Because America has this big, like, you're supposed to follow your dream.
Yeah.
You're supposed to do your ambitions. You're supposed to follow whatever your passion is. So it's like, what do you do? And the response is supposed to be whatever it is that you do is supposed to be what you're passionate about. Because I do know that there's a lot of people to like, what do you do? Like, oh, I'm an engineer, but what I really want to do is be a musician. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or like, there's like usually maybe a follow-up if you're not in the career path that you want to be.
I know as educators, a lot of educators are in it because they're passionate about it. Other fields, there's more money involved, so like
a lot more money,
like a give and take. So I know a lot of my friends that I know, like they're, engineers and doctors and stuff like that, and I wouldn't say that their careers, are their passion. I can say that my career is my passion. So, I think for a lot of teachers, not all teachers, because I can definitely tell the teachers that it's not their passion.
And I would be interested to ask, like, to a teacher who is kind of like, a disgruntled employee of the state or whatever. Like, when someone asks them, what do you do? I mean, either they're going, I'm a teacher, or they're just saying something different, because it's not like they're like, I'm an educator, I mean, there's a big difference. So that's, so it is a personal question too. And maybe that's, maybe for us, that's just the way we answer, because like you said, Tyler, that's kind of our focus and our passion. So, I mean, but I think nevertheless, very rarely, in fact, I'll say it, I've never met anyone who has a career, but chooses to introduce themselves as doing something other than their career. Like, that's how you introduce yourself, like in a professional situation. That's what I'm saying. So I'm curious, like, to our listeners in Japan and to our listeners in Germany and, like, every place that is listening right now, because we have quite a few nations that are represented. I'm curious, like, is that just an American thing? Like, educate us. We don't know. And like,
I would love to hear that.
I would too. And I mean, like, so here's your thing. Like, so if, wherever nation you're in, like, if someone says, hey, what do you do? Or tell me about yourself or whatever, is the first thing you do talk about your career? Because in America, that's pretty much the standard. That's how we start conversation.
Well, and I think that it also has, like, what your career is and what you do has something to do with, like, what brings you joy and what brings you value, especially if you're going to be a teacher.
But I don't think everybody feels that way, though.
No, you're absolutely right. Okay. And I think that's what leads us to, like, leaving jobs. And, like, that's what leads to, like, teacher burnout and, like, people getting burned out on literally anything. Like, I remember it was my first year teaching. It was toward the end of the school year. And, like, I was just having a really hard time. I wasn't jiving with other teachers that were on my campus. I wasn't really mixing with the culture at the time. Like, a lot of it was in my head, but I just wasn't doing really well. And I remember I sat down during my conference time and I literally just wrote out a list of things that brought me joy in my life. And I remember thinking, like, oh, teaching's not on here. There might be a problem.
Right. No, right. Yeah, for real. And I think that's a good exercise. So I mean, to answer your question, Mosley, I've been learning how to distance myself from my job, because I literally, I have been guilty of working almost 24/7 in a way. So definitely I understand where you're going with that. And it is something I've had to train myself to do. And I really think that's kind of what's brought us to this episode, is because I don't think I'm alone. I think there are a lot of teachers, whether you are an extracurricular teacher where you actually have responsibilities on the weekend, or whether you're not, and maybe you don't have those, but you end up doing your job beyond the hours that you're paid for. And I am not in any way shaming or advocating like that you never work outside of hours, because sometimes the job has to get done and there are things you have to do because we want to do our best for the kids, So I'm not condemning that, but I am saying that it is easy to become really unbalanced in that, to where that consumes you. And, what kind of brought this episode up to begin with is I was reading through my Twitter posts, and I started noticing on the weekends, a lot of folks on Twitter end their weekend by telling about their weekend. And I started coming across all these posts about how, was going to take the day off, but then I remembered I had, these papers, or, I had planned to go here, but then plans changed because lesson plans are due Monday. And then there's even teachers who are like kind of priding themselves like, hey, I took all weekend to do A, B, and C for my job. And I got to thinking like, oh man, this is scary, because our teachers, because they're so burdened right now with the whole COVID crisis and remote learning and whatever, I really feel like there are folks that are not ever unplugging. They're always on. And I heard a really great speaker once kind of speak to this fact. He was like, what do you do every single day to your cell phone? You charge it. Because if you don't charge your cell phone every day, then it won't work the next day. And it's the same thing with us. Like if we don't charge ourselves on a daily basis, we wake up and we're drained. And we probably have people listening right now that you're like, I think I'm to that point. Right. Like I'm drained. So what we want to do is kind of take this episode and walk you through a few ideas that you can start to kind of rhetorically ask yourself and kind of find where you are in this. Okay. So my first suggestion is this. I think that you have to first identify your titles. Like in the same way that Tyler went through and he kind of said like, what brings me joy? That's one of the steps. Okay. But I think the very first thing is you need to identify your titles. Like you are more than a teacher. Like you are something else, at least one other thing, because everyone is a child in some way. Like in other words, like you have parents, right? And if your parents have passed away, like you have other family members, which makes you a different role. So in other words, like I'll do this exercise for myself. Like, okay, great. I am a teacher. Okay. I am also a dad. I'm also a son. I'm also a brother, right? I'm also a husband. I'm not saying these in any particular order, so I know my wife will listen to this, so don't be offended.
Oh, no, he didn't.
I know he didn't ask me. Anyways.
Right. I'm going to feed our kid chicken.
Right. No! Anyways. So, okay, so then the list goes on. Okay, I'm a podcaster, right? I'm sort of a YouTuber, like I want to be anyway. So, hey, check out our YouTube channel, Teach Bigger. So, like,
hit that little subscribe button, hit the little bell.
Right, exactly. So, I'm also aspiring to be some things. Like, I'm aspiring to learn how to be an animator. I'm aspiring to become a documentary filmmaker. Like, there's other things I am. So, I am all of these things. And so, one of those things is not it. One of those things, like my career, has to take precedence because that is the driving force for a lot of this stuff. Like, in other words, if I don't have this job, I don't make money. Okay. And then I can't take care of my family. I can't be a husband. I can't be a father because we're going to be homeless, that kind of thing. So, there's a balance. So you have to figure out your balance. But the important thing is this, you have to make sure that there's a balance and that every one of your titles gets the attention that it deserves. Right. Yep. And there are times when I have to drop everything and be a dad. And then there are times that I kind of have to switch gears and drop everything and be a teacher, right? So like when I'm at work in the school day, very rarely am I a dad. well, I'm a dad to the kids, but they're not my own children. You know what I'm saying? But very rarely am I interacting with my own personal children in a school day. Okay. But then when I come home, I have to switch gears, and now it's time to give them dad time. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, and some of those relationships and some of those hats don't demand as much time. Like probably most people are in a situation where their parents, like I'm a son, but I don't have to be a son every single day. Like my parents are okay. Like we're adults now, you know, but I call and check in with my parents. I talk to them. I do spend time with them when it's time to spend time with them, you know. Go ahead.
No, I was saying that what you're saying with those hats, it kind of leads into the second point, because I think as educators, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, you know, and that's just what we do. And so, like with all those hats and all of the titles that you have to understand that all of them are gonna like you can't be perfect at all of them all the time.
Yeah.
No, and I heard this on another podcast, and it made me kind of realize of what we're talking about is like today I was a really good teacher, but I was not a very good brother. Or like, you know what? Today I was a really good brother because I went and I did something for my brother and I left school early. I could have stayed at school and worked on this and this and that, but I left school to go help my brother with this and this and that. So it's like you can't be 100% at all of them all the time, just because you can't be a million places at one time. And it's just like putting that pressure, like relieving the pressure within yourself. Like it's okay. You just have to find the balance. Like, today I'm going to be a good son. Maybe that's not 100% of a teacher, because I have to go take care of my mom and this and this and that. And, all those different titles, they change. But I think it's to lower the pressure on ourselves so we can be okay with changing hats.
I think a perfect example of that is my friend's birthday party. Like I've been going up on the weekends for at least 4 hours on either Saturday or Sunday to make sure that I have my attendance correct, make sure that I have all these things correct or whatever. Now it's a trade-off. I could stay after school and be late coming home every single day to make sure that stuff gets done. But with the way we're doing attendance and stuff, whatever, I can just do it on Saturday and then I have no interruptions. And then I'm not staying late at school. I'm getting to go home at a reasonable hour. But for that last weekend, I didn't do that. I trade off, and like, so maybe for that one day, like there are things that got done. There were things that didn't get done. And for that one day, I wasn't a very good teacher, but I was a really good friend and I was a really good brother.
Well, but
because I made sure that happened.
Well,
I would monitoring.
Yeah. Well, I would argue that you were a good teacher, right? Because a good teacher is going to have to know when to say, this is my stopping point and my work's not going to get better, or I'm not going to put everything into it if I go past this point. So that sometimes stopping is being a good teacher, because you know where your limits are.
Yep.
And to go off of like we were talking about with all these different hats, I think you need to not to think of it as hats, but think of it as an umbrella. Like you have like for me, I'm a gamer, I'm a streamer, I like to read books, I like to learn new things, I like to video edit, I like to drum, I like to just hang out with family, and all of those things, not one of those things is who I am, but it's all underneath the umbrella of Tyler. All of those things make up who I am. Not one single thing defines exactly who I am. It's just a piece of who I am. And to go off of what Mosley was talking about with that, you're not always going to be the best at every single one. I had a grad assistant when I was in college, and he used to say that sometimes something's got to go. Like you have class, you have these projects, you have maybe social obligations, maybe whatever. It's very similar to being a teacher, and sometimes you just have to go. And luckily when you're in college, you have that choice to skip out on class. You probably really shouldn't, but sometimes something's got to go. And sometimes I skipped out on class. Sometimes I missed a birthday party or something that was back home, maybe my niece or nephew or something like that. So I kind of, at some point something's got to go for something else to like live, and to not just live, but to, thrive. And those are the decisions that you kind of have to make. And like you say, and like y'all said, it's going to be there tomorrow. I literally say that to myself every single day when I leave school.
Yeah.
Like, I look at my huge to-do list that I actually wrote more things on than I crossed off.
Right.
And I say, this will stay and be here tomorrow.
Yep.
And just so you guys know, this is how I knew that Chris Pratt was a stronger worker than I was, because when I was a student teacher, I remember, like, I was like dead tired, and I went up to him, and I think I've told this story before.
I know exactly what you're gonna say.
And I was like, man, Pratt, how do you not get tired? And he's like typing an email, and he's like still typing, and he looks over at me, and he's like, oh, I'm always tired. And I'm like, oh, that's great. And then another instance, and this is the last little story, and I guess we can move on from it, is that camping trip that we've been going on and on about, right?
Yeah.
We planned that in nonstop intervals from Friday to like Sunday. We were at a Starbucks, and I remember right around hour 24 of, like, I mean, I'm talking like from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We were in that Starbucks, like, working on it. Right around the 18-hour mark, the 20-hour mark, I was sitting there, and I kept finding myself on my phone. I was like, why am I on my phone? I'm on Netflix. Why am I on Netflix? What's happening right now? Like, and I look over, and Pratt's still working. I'm like, oh my God, I'm tired. Like,
Yeah.
I can't work anymore. And he's still over there just like, he's like, isn't this fun? I'm like, yeah, it was fun 20 hours ago. Like, now I'm going to go home, man.
That's what happened when we did the musical. When we had to like create songs and all that. I'm like, dude, I can't come up with another lyric. My brain is off. And he's like, what about this? Should we work on the next part of the script? I'm like, dude, it's 11 o'clock in the night. Go away. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, I guess the balance is I'm not really a morning person, if that makes you feel better.
Oh, yeah. That's very, yeah, I agree.
Anyway.
And
I think I helped you become more of a morning person.
You did.
Because I would just be a super annoying to you just because you were ugly in the morning.
You at least helped me not to be an ugly morning person.
Mm-hmm. And on another episode, I'll tell y'all how he was really ugly to me after one spring break, but we'll leave that for another episode.
All right.
To wrap it all around, earlier when I said that I made a list of things that brought me joy in my life, and that I was like, oh, teaching's not on here. Like, that's a problem, because that's what I do majority of my day. Well, when I started investing myself into more of those things on that list, I found myself putting teaching on that list. And then as I started investing myself more into my relationships, like my family or my community, or like things that just brought me joy, drumming or gaming or just watching Netflix, writing stories, whatever, I found myself putting teaching higher on that list. And I found myself having more fun teaching, because whatever I was doing in my life at that moment, I was bringing into the classroom.
Yeah.
And it made my students think that I had a life outside of class, which is good, because you need them to know that you have a life, because they have a life.
Yeah.
And that's something that y'all can share together. Like, that means that they're going to understand, because they don't live at the school. You know, they're not expecting me to live at the school.
Well, and
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think that kind of brings us to a next great point is, what do you constantly do to become an expert in what you do and beyond? So it's like, you know, Tyler was talking about bringing it into the classroom. And so, you know, for example, you know, we all have a music background, and I'll be honest, like, once I became a teacher, I never played my instrument again. Now, there's a lot of music educators who do still play, and they go out and they do jobs, they have gigs, they do different things. That just wasn't my world. Like, I didn't really care for performing all that much. And so, but those people are able to bring that experience back into the classroom with them. You know, now for me, it was other things. Like, I'm way more into like social emotional learning and collaboration and teamwork. And so I was able to bring that element to the program, you know, of building culture. That's more what I like to do. And so all that being said, you know, that's one thing to really think about is, what are you doing? A way to recharge is, what are you doing to grow your craft? And, you know, maybe it's not even teaching, because I mean, I don't, I'm thinking through like, well, for example, okay, my wife homeschools, right? And my kids are really young. They're like pre-K and younger. But she is constantly researching and finding methods and ways to teach them, how to read and how to write and all these other things. And so she's constantly doing that. So she's able to bring that to them. So she's always growing in her field. She's always growing in her area. So that's one step to avoiding that burnout and to make sure that you continue. I mean, I guess call it professional learning if you want, but it's your growing and continuing on. Again, I am not just a teacher. I'm also a learner. So that's another role that I have to keep in balance.
Yeah, and don't think that we're talking about like the professional development of whatever your content is. There's a lot of teachers out there who teach content that they didn't even go to school for. I got a music degree and now I'm a media teacher.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And and
Yeah.
I'm having a blast with it. And I think one of the reasons I did that was because I wanted to have more fun with playing with my own music than I did wanting to teach it. And I was having more fun teaching the technology, and it was forcing me to learn and challenge myself with something new. So it's not necessarily something that is your content, and know that anything that you do, because your content is a reflection of yourself, or not your content, but your teaching. Your teaching is a reflection of yourself. So if you build yourself up and add more to yourself, whether that be like experiences going to the beach, camping out at the Grand Canyon, like whatever it might be, maybe just going and hanging out with your family. When you have that, that's going to grow you as a person. So in a sense, it is the highest form of professional development, because then you're going to bring that into your classroom and you're going to be the best that you possibly can at that thing. Does that make sense? I feel like I kind of rambled a little bit on that one.
No, I think we get you. I think also, and I've done this, and this really happened during the COVID quarantine 2020, because we were away from, kids and teaching and stuff like that. I find myself like finding videos and like doing things that reconnected me back to what like I love about the job. And so I think for teachers, when you take a step back, I think you should continuously like find things in your area that excite you about the job, things that you're interested in, like even if it's not a thing you get to do day in and day out, like if I'm a middle school teacher teaching something, and what really gets me excited is something maybe on a higher level, like go watch a video on it or spend some time doing something that just gets you excited about what you do, and it might give you ideas, spark some passion, like keep you fresh. I know like on the music side, I listen to a lot of performances, and that kind of cleans your ears out and gets you excited. And like, you know what, man, like I'm ready to do this. So I think it's kind of like a mini professional development, but it's geared to what excites you about your particular area. And I think that's important too, to keep growing and stay excited for the kids.
So I guess, just kind of to recap, if we're talking about as educators helping us to stay balanced, right? Like this whole idea of like, how do we live a balanced life so that we don't burn out, or so that we don't, neglect the things that are important. So first thing we have to do is we have to recognize our titles, and we have to know what they are and prioritize them. Okay. And then we have to have that realization that we cannot be exceptional at everything all the time. So there are going to be seasons where this is what we focus on, and maybe that's even on a rotating daily basis, okay? But we have to prioritize that. And then we have to think about, what are we doing to become an expert in our life? What are we doing to learn, to grow, so that we can bring those experiences back into the classroom? And then I think what goes along with that is, what do we do to get out of our comfort zones and challenge ourselves? Like maybe there are these hobbies or these things that you've always wanted to do, and you need to take the time to do them. For a lot of people, like, I want to go skydiving. Like, that's what they want. I don't want to go skydiving, but my brother did. And like, he went multiple times and he loved it. And it was like such a great thing for him to do. And so, I think that you have to start thinking like, what challenges me and what's going to give me more life experience so that I can fuel off of that. So anything else that you guys want to add to that whole idea of challenging yourself?
You can go ahead.
No, I mean, I just think that being outside your comfort zone, period, in and outside of the classroom is just where you're going to grow, period. So you might have to take a step back and find something, because sometimes you might not come up with ideas just like while you're busy. When you stop and say, you know what, I've always wanted to do this. Okay, I'm going to make a plan of doing this, and I'm going to set a date, and then work toward it. It gives you so much. Like working toward a goal that you set gives you so much fulfillment. And then like after you accomplish it, you just feel like, you know what, I did that. I took it's for me and no one else. And that helps you in like, I don't know, just in the whole spectrum, I think. So outside your comfort zone, set a goal of something that's going to push you to be more, it might make you uncomfortable, and then give yourself a timeline and then go and accomplish it. Don't even have nothing to do with being a teacher. And then, and you said it, I would say like tell someone to help hold you accountable, and then find you a date and, like work toward it and celebrate and enjoy the fact that you reached a goal that you set, and you can see how things will just like, line up after that, I believe. So
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a difference in what we've been talking about. There's definitely a difference between professional development and personal development, and a lot of what we've been talking about is personal development. And I think that's what I was trying to say earlier when I was just kind of rambling on, was that it's all about personal development. And there's one moment in college that has always really kind of stuck with me, is because they're putting the fear of God into us with like how to be a teacher and like the rules and things of that nature, and because we're still college kids, like don't be dumb kind of talk. And I remember they presented two pictures to us, two profile pictures, and one was a guy who was just he was at the beach, nothing fancy, nothing crazy, he's at the beach. And then there was another picture of somebody who was like in a suit, and they were like, who do you think got the job? And the answer was that the person who had the suit had the job. And now that I've been a teacher, I look back and I'm like, well, you know what? That doesn't matter like what that looked like, because one person is doing something that they love doing. They're at the beach. So what if they're in a bathing suit? This person, maybe he's doing something that he loves, but it looks like he only has things that are turned on, like, so and that's where I started really kind of thinking about like, or I started reflecting on that, thinking about like being a teacher doesn't define me. There are other things that it's just one piece of who I am. You know what I'm saying? And I think getting out of your comfort zone constantly is just a good thing, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And just exploring what you enjoy doing.
I want to bring up like this last little step I think that's helpful in helping you to realize, how to balance your life out. And I really am intrigued by minimalist and the minimalist lifestyle. And so I've done quite a bit of research on that. And what kind of started that was that my wife and I are the antithesis of minimalist. We are pack rats and we have everything. And
we call those hoarders.
I know. We
I've been to your house.
Look, don't tiptoe around it. You're hoarders. Go ahead and say it.
Well, I have good news. We are no longer hoarders because we have gotten rid of half of our things. So
and then rebought it.
So no, you're half hoarders.
I'm a half a hoarder. But anyways, so I've watched some documentaries. There's a really good one on Netflix and some different things. And one of the things that really stuck with me about people who are striving to live a minimalist lifestyle is this. They say the way that they decide what to keep or what to get rid of is simply this. If it brings joy to them or adds value to their life, they keep it. And if it doesn't, they get rid of it.
That's good.
And that is good because really, and I realize maybe not everything is black and white like that, but I think most things are. And, immediately you can, here's how you know you're a hoarder. If you suddenly got defensive, you're like, well, what about my this?
I'm just thinking like, what if I need it?
Right. You don't have to become
I might need it down the line.
Like I might need it in my life.
Exactly. You don't have to become defensive. But here's the thing. When you start to really look at it, I was able to get rid of so many things in my home because I looked at it and be like, first of all, like I didn't even realize I had it. Okay. Or second of all, like, okay, I have it, but I don't get too excited about that. Like it's kind of in my way sometimes or whatever the case may be. But I think that that's what happens in our personal lives. There are activities that we're doing. There are parts of our jobs that we're doing that may be due to our lack of preparation or poor planning or bad management of time or whatever the case may be. It's extra. And we really don't have to do it. And maybe we do it because it's what we've always done or because we're in this routine, or maybe it's like a security blanket where we think, I can't do this without it. But it's not bringing value or joy to our life. It's bringing stress and frustration. You know, and somebody's listening and they're like, well, teaching brings me stress and frustration. Well, I don't know.
It does for all of us at a point.
It does. So I would encourage you to like really be intentional about this and just kind of like sit down and make your list. Like, you know, like exactly what Tyler said. What brings joy to my life? Okay. What brings value? And then what do I need to get rid of? What do I need to eliminate so that I have more room for the things that matter?
Here's what I think too. Mm-hmm. I think to be able to do these things that we're talking about, you have to just like stop, take a step back, and then like be able to go down the list so you can evaluate. You can't do this like you have to be able to detach, you know? Because I think I realized all of these things that like I needed to do to bring more balance during the quarantine when it's like, stop. You're not going to go to work. You're not going to work 80 hours this week. You're not going to get up at 4:00 a.m. You're like, oh, okay. Now I can see. Then I was able to like set goals. I was able to find more fun in my life and do all the things that we're talking about. And, you know.
Well, and look, I'll be honest, like for a driven workaholic like me, which I tend to be sometimes.
All the time.
Sometimes it takes other people to help you realize this. And kind of the turning point for me was whenever I left full-time high school band director life and switched to administration. And I had a driving force behind that, and it was this. It was the day that my wife and I were talking, and she said this, and it's rung in my ears. She said, I just feel like a single parent. And the irony is she's not a single parent. And I mean, tremendous respect for single parents out there. I can imagine how difficult that is. And my wife can too, because there's been a lot of times when I haven't been there, you know? And I realized like, I have to change. And so I didn't stop being an educator, but I stopped that role because that role was bringing stress to our life.
A lot of time.
So I had to change it. I had to change that because I was working 60 to 80 hours a week. And I didn't see my oldest daughter the first year and a half of her life, or maybe more, you know? And so I had to balance that out. And so I hope that today's episode is kind of just hitting you maybe in the heart a little bit, and you're going like, I need to take a step back and think about this. And it's not that you just like jump to a drastic measure and say, forget it, I'm going to go, you know, do whatever, which I have a tendency to do sometimes. But, you know, you've got to be intentional about it. You got to think through it and make some decisions so that your life can be balanced and you can be the best you that you can be. Well, thanks for listening today. I hope that you feel refreshed after kind of hearing this, and maybe you were feeling down and you're like, there's hope. There's this.
I feel so much better now.
Right? So look, it's a matter of just taking some time, find that quiet place, find some alone time, and figure out like, what's my balance point and what do I need to do? What changes need to be made? If things are not going the way you want them to, then you got to make a change. Okay? Because if you keep doing it the same way, thank you, Tyler. All right. If you keep doing it the same way, you're going to get the same results, right? So we got to make a change. So thanks for listening today. If you want to interact with us, or you have questions, or maybe even an idea for an episode, or you just want to share your story, contact us, info@teachbigger.com. Also, I would encourage you to subscribe to the podcast. We release episodes every Monday and Wednesday, and whenever you subscribe, you'll get a notification. So that way you don't forget or miss, or just it could be that little moment in your day where you're like, oh, something exciting and new and fresh, and the guys that teach bigger, this will be fun. So definitely subscribe wherever you're listening to your podcast. And lastly, check out our YouTube channel, Teach Bigger. And we've been giving out some tech tips and different things like that. So we would love for you to check those out and get some feedback. So have a great week, and we will talk again soon.